And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Welcome to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast.
Flibbity-gibbity nonsense.
I thought it was terrific.
It's not just big, it's huge.
Let's go.
Welcome and thanks for listening and watching the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast. My name is Jeff Morey and I'm your host. And yes, you heard that right. I am now full video as well as audio. So you can not only listen to me on your favorite platform, you can also watch me as well. And while I'm sure that not many people care about seeing me or seeing me talk, I'm sure you do want to see all the very cool and interesting people I talk to. And this week is no different. I have a great guest lined up for my very first video episode. His name is Chuck Zukowski. And if you're a UFO and paranormal guy like me, then you probably already know who he is. Chuck's been researching UFOs for over 35 years, and along with his son Daniel and Heather Taddy, was the star of the TV show Alien Highway. Alien Highway was on the air in 2019 on the Travel Channel, and like so many other great shows, was canceled after only one season. And if you're a UFO fanatic like me, then you are as upset as I am, because Alien Highway was an amazing show. Chuck was also a former volunteer deputy sheriff and is a member of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance and has appeared on hundreds of paranormal TV, radio, and podcasts. He's one of the world's most well-known and respected UFO researchers, and I'm excited to talk to him. But before I do, let's talk about what's going on in our country and around the world this week. All right, brace yourselves, people. The Powerball jackpot has exploded, climbing to an estimated $1.7 billion for Saturday's drawing, making it the third largest in U.S. history, with an estimated cash payout of roughly $770 million. People across the nation are lining up at kiosks, hoping their luck might finally pay off after no winner in the past 41 drawings. I'll admit I'm not generally a big lottery guy myself, but I can't resist the urge to at least get a few drawings when the jackpot gets this big. This is the kind of money that not only will take care of all my family for the rest of their lives, but also my kids' kids, and would allow me to give back to our veterans, homeless, animal rescues, and some of the things that matter to me. And not to sound like a socialist here, but if the Elons and Jeff Bezos of the world would give even like 10% of their fortunes back to those in need, our world would be a much better place. This week, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. testified before the Senate, a hearing that quickly turned fiery as lawmakers from both parties pressed him on his controversial stances on vaccines and public health. Senator Michael Bennet, for instance, challenged Kennedy sharply over claims from a new advisory panel member that mRNA vaccines could cause harm or death, allegations Bennet flatly rejected as false. Speaking of vaccines, Florida's Surgeon General Joseph Ladapo, with full cooperation from Governor Ron DeSantis, has announced plans to eliminate all state vaccine mandates, including school immunization requirements, calling such mandates immoral and likening them to slavery. Florida would thus become the first state in modern history to take this sweeping step. This is a very controversial topic and one that has had major implications for me personally in my life. I'm going to leave this topic alone for now, but I'll be doing a full show in depth about this subject sometime in the near future, so stay tuned. In a rare bipartisan moment, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has lent her support to a new bill that would bar members of Congress and their families from trading stocks, joining forces with both Republicans and Democrats to back serious ethics reform. AOC was introduced to the podium to speak on Thursday by my former guest and Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett. And she stood alongside Tim, Anna Paulina Luna, Chip Roy, and other Republicans voicing her support for the proposed bill, which would rightfully be named the Pelosi Act after one of the most crooked politicians in recent memory, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who's reportedly worth somewhere around $245 million after spending years doing insider trading while serving in Congress. Federal Appeals Court, namely the Fifth Circuit, has ruled that Trump administration cannot deport alleged members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. The 2-1 decision found that the wartime law cannot be applied in peacetime absent an actual invasion or military engagement. I have no doubt Trump will push the Supreme Court to take a look at this one, and we'll probably be hearing more about this in the coming weeks. Fashion icon Giorgio Armani has passed away this week. Armani was a visionary and a titan in the fashion industry, and I must admit, Armani Mania was always my go-to cologne back in the day. R.I.P. Giorgio. And finally, it's that time of the year again. Football is back, baby. College football kicked off last week, and the NFL kicked off on Thursday night with the Eagles defeating the Cowboys 24-20. What a dramatic finish it was. Rookie star linebacker Jalen Carter was ejected before the first offensive play of the game for spitting on Dak Prescott. And following a lengthy weather delay, Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts sealed Philly's win on the final drive by converting a 3rd and 3 with a scramble up the middle. And we haven't even got past the first game before the conspiracy theories start coming out already about the NFL being rigged. I saw lots of posts on Friday about how this was the most dramatized season opener ever, and I must admit I tend to lean toward that conclusion myself. I actually did a show a while back about the NFL possibly being rigged, but who cares? I'm just glad football is back. Go Vols, baby. That's what's happening in the news this week. At this time, I want to welcome my guest this week, the UFO nut himself, Mr. Chuck Zukowski. Chuck, how are you, bud? Thanks for doing my show.
Oh, yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Before we talk all UFOs or UAPs, should I say, for those that don't know, could you tell us a little bit about your background and what first got you into investigating UFOs?
It's interesting because, a lot of people ask me that question and I just say, I'm not going to tell you. No, no, ever since I can remember, it'd be like maybe back when I was 6 or 7, because I remember in elementary school, I always had this fascination. I can't remember really good what happened when I was that young, but I do remember that it goes way back to when I lived in Safford, Arizona, a small town, that I was really into UFOs and just the paranormal. And I know I was there. I think I left Stafford when I was about 7 or 8. So I know it's around that 6 to 8 year old timeline that I had this fascination with ghosts, Bigfoot, UFOs, and then a little bit of dinosaurs, because I like dinosaurs too. But I've always had a fascination with UFOs. I didn't realize until later in life that my mom had a UFO event, and then her sister, my aunt, had a UFO event. So and my mom had one when she was a little girl in a town called Morenci, Arizona, which wasn't too far from Safford. And my aunt had her UFO event was on the 2-lane highway in California, driving to Arizona in the middle of the night. So it's in the family.
I was going to say it runs in the family. You got, you didn't have much of a choice, did you?
I didn't, I always wonder about that. But it's really interesting because even, I do remember specifically that that time frame when I was that young, I had one dream that came true. I'll never ever forget that. And then there was other little times where I could predict something, and I would just say something to my mom, and I say, "Hey, we're gonna see Grandma today or whatever." And this is when we lived in California, and then here she shows up that day, driving out all night from Arizona, and I don't get that anymore, but it was like, I don't know, I was pretty in tune when I was that age. I could see things. Well, for those of you out there that are Catholics, and I'm no longer one, or not at least a practicing one, but I used to go to catechism after elementary school, which was just a form of babysitting, because my mom and dad worked. And so a bus would pick you up and take you, to the church, and then you have to deal with the nuns for the next couple hours. But I remember I was always getting in trouble and with the nuns, because they would be preaching something or teaching something, and I would say, that's not right. And I remember saying it a few times, and I'm getting in trouble for it too, where I said, no, it's bigger, it's different, it's bigger. So maybe when I was quite young, maybe I saw something I don't really remember or whatever, but I do remember getting in trouble with the nuns saying, no, 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 there's more out there. There's more to life than what you're saying. It's bigger. And I'm like 6 and 7. Yeah, because I started first grade when I was 5. So it had to be when I was 5 or 6 going to catechism. So
Yeah, I know how you feel on that. I'm practicing Presbyterian, and I get a lot of flack from family and other people about some of my paranormal views, but
yeah,
I'm a believer. I will always be a believer, but I'm also a believer in the paranormal. Like
really.
you nailed it, man. There's so much more out there.
It's interesting how, and I don't want to offend anybody, but because I've had a lot of debates through the 35 plus years I've been doing this. I've even had debates with reverends and even a priest one time. And it seems like some people like to put limitations on their God. Let's just say, not a God, let's just say their God,
Right.
because God's different in different religions. And just like a blog I wrote years ago, to know what an alien thinks, you would have to be an alien. Or to
Absolutely.
figure out what an alien does, you would have to be an alien. So for all those people that seem to think they know what a God can do, you're not a God. There's no way of even perceiving what a God can do, let alone with modern day science. And it gets me mad because I actually did a blog release not just a week or so ago about this interstellar object that's coming into our solar system, and it'll be here October, November. But modern day science, for whatever reason, they're still stuck in the medieval period. They seem to think that everything, life, everything happened with the Big Bang here.
Yeah.
As long as I can remember, I remember that that life is just greater and greater than anybody can even imagine.
Absolutely.
And so in my blog, I said, yeah, there was a Big Bang, but there was probably a mega Big Bang that caused an infinite amount of smaller Big Bangs that caused their own galaxies and, solar universes and all that. Because no one, if you just sit and think about infinite, or you can't think of, and as I remember as a little kid, what's at the end of our universe? What's beyond that? More universes. Okay, so what's at the end of that? Well, more. Well, what's at the end of that? Well, more. Well, and it's really hard for humans to fully
To
understand,
comprehend it. Yeah. It's hard to wrap your head around it.
We just don't have that capability of fully understanding what the word, infinite is. It's never ending. But but that has to be an ending. And the reason why we think that is because we're three-dimensional, and we touch things and we see things that are ending, especially life. Life comes and goes, and we see that, we experience that every day. Unfortunately, there was a shooting today,
Yeah.
in a church. But so we experience life and death, but to try and even comprehend what life is and where it goes. So yeah, ever since I can remember, I can tell you just by, just statistic analysis that there's millions upon millions of intelligent life forms other than us.
And then
Yeah.
there's the people that this seems to have come up the last few shows that I've done, that people that believe that we live in a simulation. My
You know,
last two guests that has both come up, Camille James Harmon. I don't know if you know her or not. She's a UFO abductee and used to be an actress. And Sarah Spencer, who is an AI tech CEO, that came up with both of them. And, Camille said that she was on a set with somebody in NSA that was the daughter of some high ranking official. And she said that her dad told her that we were living in a simulation. And Sarah told me on the last show that I did, she's a really, really smart gal. And she told me that she believes we're living in a simulation. She said, because when you get outside, the further in the universe you get, the math breaks down, is what she told me. And you're a lot smarter guy than me. I'm not smart enough to understand any of that. I don't even try. I stay in my lane. But, it's just funny that keeps coming up with me lately, that the simulation thing, the matrix or whatever you want to call it,
Well, the problem with that is we're very limited in knowledge and what we can and can't understand. I mean, we don't fully use the whole capacity of our brains as it is.
Right.
And so the smartest of the smartest that say that we are living in a simulation, they're still not smart enough to totally understand what's going on. That's just their perception based on what they perceive and what they think. And I get that all the time as a UFO investigator. Well, aliens, if aliens are here, why don't they just land on the White House grounds? That's what we would do. That's what a human would do. If a human, we would land, like not forbidden planet, like the day the Earth stood still.
Right.
With Klaatu Barada Nikto, right? So, that's different because that movie was written by, a human, and that's what we would perceive. But if you're an alien and you have your own agenda and you may or may not have emotions and personality traits like we do, you may not understand. And we could talk a little bit about cattle mutilations and why that goes on and da 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 da, is because they don't think like humans. So if you want to be a UFO investigator, you've got to be way, way out of the box.
Yeah, I think outside the box. Absolutely.
Really, I mean, you can't say, well, why are they doing this? No, you just have to accept, okay, this is what they did. So now I have to try to understand the reasoning behind it. It's not up to them to try and figure us out. We're trying to figure out, why we think they're doing things where it's mundane to them and it's their normal, get up in the morning and make a cup of coffee. And then when we perceive them doing that, we think, oh my God, this is something ridiculously crazy, and it's just, anyway, and so there's so much to dwell on something like that. But that's why I try to stay out of religion as much as I can. Now, as for the simulation part, I have to tell you now, okay, for people who totally believe in God and believe that everything that happens here is God's will and it's because of God, and okay, more power to you. I don't know. I don't believe that. But once again, I'm a UFO nut. I believe in crazy things. So, who's to say I'm right or wrong? It's everybody is right and everybody's wrong because that's just the way life is. But if you think about it, and if you think that way, then isn't that God in control of us as the simulation? If everything we do is already pre-planned by God, for people who think like that, then yes, absolutely, we're in a simulation because we're in God's simulation, which would kind of make sense,
right?
Because everything's pre-planned. Now, what I believe is okay. So let's say this higher force, that God created life on this planet and said, okay, let's see what happens, and it's up to us to make it work. And it's up to us if it doesn't work, and da 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 da. And if you stub your toe, what's not God's will, and da da da. Because it's just that God gave us the mentality, the intelligence to make our own decisions, and that also includes make our own mistakes. If you
Absolutely.
think about it that way, then it's a little easier to understand life and death. So, I mean, you can get really, really deep in that. But I got to tell you, though, because I tell my wife all the time, I go, we got to be in a simulation. Think about this. Okay. Every time I work on a car and I drop a nut and bolt or something, a nut, it rolls to the very center underneath of the car where I have to lay down and stretch and get that. Okay, every time. I could drop a screw, a little screw in the garage on my workbench, and it'll roll. Somehow it'll get 6 or 7 yards away from me. I have a vintage Pontiac, and I was working on it one time, and I dropped a little bolt, and it should have just gone right down through the firewall or through the engine compartment to the ground, because there's really nothing in a 57 Pontiac that fills up the whole engine compartment. But somehow it found its way in this little tiny hole, just bigger than the bolt in the frame. And so you're going, why? Yeah. And then I'll give you one last thing. So when my wife and I, we were packing up to come out from Colorado to Texas last year, we were leaving way early in the morning, like 2:30 in the morning, out of a subdivision in Colorado Springs. And I get out 2:30 in the morning, and I get to the stop sign, and I got to wait for one car to go by. There's no other cars out there that I've seen that whole night, but yet one car had to be there at exactly the same time, where I had to wait for this guy to slowly go by so I can make my left turn. And it makes you wonder,
Are we in a big aquarium or like an ant farm, and they're just tapping the window at us?
Someone's having some fun
These
with
little ants.
The more you think about it, the more you realize that, yeah, you really can't, you can't deny what you experience.
Right.
But I think there's more to this. And I don't know, X-Files had a great episode years and years ago, and Burt Reynolds was in it, and he was the timekeeper where everything in the universe just ran like a clock, and everything was timed. And
I don't remember that one. I'm an X-Files junkie too, and I don't remember that episode.
And I'll never forget that one, because it was like, it's like, that everything, there's a reason and a purpose for everything.
Yeah.
I think that's what they were kind of, drawing to. And it's kind of nice to know that. But, where I look, most people will say, oh man, it's Tuesday or it's Wednesday. I can't wait till Friday. I can't wait till Saturday. Actually, I like every day, and I look forward to the next day, and I look forward to the next day. I've always thought that way. I never look forward to Friday. I look forward to Thursday.
Really?
And Thursday, I look forward to Friday. And then like I was telling him, every day I try to either, if I don't learn something new, I at least try to do something that accomplish something. And that way, it's like every day you're achieving something, no matter how trivial. I mean, it could just be making your bed in the morning, which was on the internet years ago. That was a big general that was doing a speech in front of the cadets or whatever. It says that the one thing you do every morning is make your bed, and the rest of the day goes crazy. And at least you can look back when you come home saying, I accomplished one thing. I made my bed. But it's all psychological, and that's right. What keeps people like crazy people like me going.
Well, you mentioned learning something every day. You're a smart guy. A lot of people don't know this. Don't you develop microchips in your spare time?
Well, that's kind of my job. I'm an IC mass design engineer. I wouldn't say it's smart. I mean, I think plumbers are pretty smart because they can do things I can't do, and I think some mechanics are pretty smart because they can do things that I can't do. So I think when it comes to being smart, I think everybody's kind of smart in their own, in what they do. I happen to get into microchip design pretty early in my life, and I've always been involved in electronics. Even in high school, I took 3 years of electronics class, and I was a geek, no doubt. And that's what we did. We played, and during the school auditorium, during the pep rallies, me and another buddy, we built a siren in electronics class and piped it through a preamp, and and we interrupted the whole pep so by being annoying geeks, but that's what you do. So I've always been involved in technology, which makes me, compared to other people in ufology that are UFO investigators, it gives me a heads up because
It gives you an edge.
yeah, it gives me an edge because some of the projects I've been on, I worked on a spy satellite years and years ago. I worked on a deep space probe. I've worked on LiDAR systems, which is for autonomous driving, Wi-Fi, cellular, all kinds of GPS systems. So I kind of know a little bit about how things should work that are made by humans. So as a UFO investigator, and to be a good UFO investigator, if for anybody out there that wants to do that, you have to question yourself, number one, and then you question other people, and you just don't assume that what they're telling you is exactly, or it's an alien or a UFO. You have to challenge yourself. You have to try every way of trying to debunk that investigation. The lights in the sky, make sure it's not, another one of Musk's rockets, a Starlinks, or, airplane or drone or whatever. You have to eliminate all the possibilities and plausibilities first before you can hit that unknown saying, okay, that's a UFO.
Right.
And that's a problem we have right now with TV was because of DEI. And I know people hate to hear me say that, but I've seen it firsthand, especially on some of the TV shows I've been on, where people only got their job because of their sex or their whatever. I don't want to say it, but it's because of DEI.
No, you're telling the truth. You're 100% right.
And they knew nothing. They knew nothing about what was going on. And it was funny because I'm like, geez, you guys are the investigators and you don't know what you're doing. It's so sad, but you're the right age. You're the right
Check all the
height,
boxes.
you're the right gender, because for some reason TV seems to think that, between 24 and 32 is the right age. That's great. If you're looking for someone that has less than 4 or 5 years experience in the paranormal or ufology, but when you look at people that have been doing it for 30 years, yeah, you're gonna be looking at people in their 50s and 60s, but we've seen shit. And we've experienced stuff a lot more than other people have, and we can call you out on it. So I get frustrated watching these goofy TV shows because, especially these ghost ones too, were oh my God, did you hear that?
Oh, I know.
Did you hear that? Well, you open the door up, it's going to change this barometer. You should have a barometer so you can know that the changes of the temperature changes, moisture, everything kind of changes when you open a door and close the door, and your house is gonna make noise and da 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 da. I love it when I watch these shows and I did a sweep. I go, of the whole place. Well, did you turn off the Wi-Fi? You turn all the lights off, but you're in the building, and the building's got a Wi-Fi system, and that's electromagnetic fields that your meters are going to pick up. Did you shut all that off? And then I love it because I was on Ghost Adventures once, and Zach's got his EMF meter and stuff, and we're inside this cave, and Aaron's right next to him, and he whips that meter around, and it's literally inches away from a very high-powered camera with large batteries, that's giving off.
And it starts going off, and they dramatize it for TV. Look at this hit right here.
Oh my gosh, and it's funny. It's just funny, and I'm sitting there going, giving myself the stupid look, like, it is what it is. But and as goofy as these TV shows are, at least they're accomplishing one thing, and that's by keeping people interested in the topic. As stupid as it is.
True.
Well, the thing is, if you've been in it as long as I have, and you've been in, I don't know how many different TV shows I've done little spots on in my IMDb, just a bunch, and you see stuff, and then even other people, other investigators, they'll say stuff just to make it more, exciting. But I do know that Bigelow had bought Robert Bigelow had bought the Skinwalker Ranch from the original family for a few $100,000, and then sold it to an investment group for a few million. Okay, now the investment group is in the process of recouping their investment, and by recouping their investment is creating a TV show and making money off their TV show, and then taking their, and then they have another off, shoot or whatever. So when you know the behind the scenes of what's going on, it kind of sucks, because I know that, that probably about 80%, maybe 90% of the stuff.
Fabricated.
I can tell you about Skinwalker Ranch, though. Anybody that wants to, and there is a lot of paranormal stuff out there, no doubt about it. Okay, a lot of UFO stuff out there. Anybody that wants to investigate the Skinwalker Ranch, forget the ranch. Okay, it's a 5 to 8 mile radius of where the ranch is. You can go
Valley, right? The whole Uinta Basin, and that
whole base.
Your very first show I was going to ask you about Alien Highway. It was just such a great show. I was so mad when that got canceled. That was your very first episode, was the Uinta Basin. I love that show.
I do.
Great. I mean,
it's funny. I got to tell you about Alien Highway. So I know we're probably getting off topic here a bit, but
no, I was going to ask you about the show anyway. I loved it. It was I can't believe it was only on one season, because it was just, the production was great. Everything about it was great.
Well, what happened was Scripps came in, and there was like Discovery Network at the time, and there was a merger. Just about the time our show was airing, there was a merger, and our executive producer was let go. And that's why we lost it, because our ratings, our Nielsen ratings, we were the highest rated.
I thought it had great ratings.
And then a couple of times we beat out everybody during the whole week. It was funny though, because I met briefly William Shatner, and we were on the same Wednesday night, and I just went to one of his signings, and we have to pay like $70, but I go, how can I get William Shatner to look up at me, because he's just kind of looking down and just signing and doing this stuff,
Yeah.
right? And it was just while my show was on, and so I went over, and he got the little card with my name on it. I said, Mr. Shatner, I just got to tell you, my TV show is competing with your TV show on Wednesday nights. And he stopped and he looked up at me and he goes, how are you doing? I said, you're kicking my ass. and he smiled.
Is that the unexplained? Is that the unexplained you're talking about?
Yeah. And he laughed, and that was my way of getting him to look up and look at me. We had just this quick 1 to 2 sentences, which was pretty good for me, for William Shatner, because I was Star Trek fan. So, but the very first episode was not Skinwalker. That was the first one that they aired as the first one, because they aired him a little bit out of sequence as we shot it. So the first one, we were in Missouri, and the creator of the show, he had done this. I'd heard about it. He had done this on some other shows too, where he creates false evidence and just to spice things up, right? And we were in Missouri, and my son and I were investigating this area where this lady said that she had this UFO sighting, and then people have been watching her. Sometimes someone may be watching her off at a distance, like maybe it might be government or something, or whatever, or an alien. She doesn't know. So we're shooting this episode, and it's at night, and just getting dark, and off in the distance, there's a figure way out in the distance, and we spot him, and she goes, oh my God, that's probably him. So Dan, my brother, my son Dan, and I, we took off running. Now you have to understand, my son Dan was a full-time cop at the time, deputy sheriff. I'm a former deputy sheriff volunteer, because my full-time job is microchip design. Not like I have other things to do, but
right.
But I was carrying, and he was carrying, and we took off after this guy at night, and we were chasing this guy down, and he was on, and we didn't have walkie-talkies, we didn't have earpieces on, the crew did, and someone was running behind us, and said, don't stop, don't stop, or no, don't stop, but stop. don't go any further, right? And when we were in a full run, both of us, we were going to get this guy and we were going to drop him. Not we're going to shoot him, but we're going to
Right.
take him
Yeah,
out
I know
and
what
find
you
out
mean.
who he is because he's on private property. And then we got about 20, 30 feet away from him. And it was the creator of the show. He goes, don't shoot me, don't shoot me.
It was a guy in a ghillie suit or something.
No, he was just sneaking around in the background to make it look like somebody was on the property. He didn't tell anybody. And so when my son and I took off after him, he was fearing for his life because we were going to take him down because we were in a full run. And when you're in a full run, you come up to someone, there's all kinds of maneuvers you can make to drop him real quick on his face. And he was afraid of getting shot. We wouldn't have shot him. Yeah, well, now I would have shot him now. But we went back and we stopped production. And I got in my pickup truck because I had my truck the whole time because I had all my gear in it. Because 7 out of the 8 episodes were my investigations. And I said, I'm out of here. He goes, what do you mean you're out? You signed a contract. I said, oh, I'm not. Oh, no. We're doing this we're doing this. These are active investigations, and we were not going to lie to the public. Now, I'm not saying this just to promote the TV show. This is exactly, you can hook me up to a polygraph and you can talk to my son. This is exactly, I said, no, I want this real. Everybody that I interviewed for the TV show was the very first time I interviewed them. There was no pre-talking. There was no pre-interview. I knew who they were. I knew what we were going to talk about, but it was all on the fly, investigative interviews. All the questions were real. Nothing was pre-written.
Wow.
The only thing that was written down was, this is, you may have to touch base on this topic, or they're going to talk about this, just to FYI you or something, and this guy's here to talk about this. But we had no details, and I didn't want that. I wanted everything to be real as I could to make it look like a real investigation. And so I said, no, I'm out of here. I hopped in my truck and my son jumped in the truck and he goes, I go, yeah, I'm driving back to Colorado. I'm out of here. I said, screw you guys. If this is how you're going to do this, I'm not going to be a part of it. And we started to back up and then we had a director and we had a showrunner, and they both stood behind my truck so I couldn't back up without hitting them. They said, let's talk about this. And we sat down and talked about it. And, and they promised, okay, we'll never do this again. It was the very first show. They had done it on other TV shows.
Right.
And just because that's what Hollywood does, that's what they do.
That's the expectation.
They lie to people. And that's what a lot of these TV shows now are doing, is they're embellishing the truth, which is rather than lying, or they're exaggerating evidence big time. And I didn't want that. So we had a long talk, and we cut. We didn't even finish that. We had to come back the next night to finish up because I said, I'm not even going to finish up tonight. And that was it. It took that one time to set it right. And unfortunately for the next 7 episodes, I always had that in my back of my mind that maybe they may pull this off again. So to be aware, what's going on and stuff, because they may be pulling this crap again. They didn't. They were really cool about it.
Wow.
And it turned out to be really, really good after that. And they were a great bunch of guys, just a bunch of guys after that. But luckily at the very first episode, the boundaries were set.
That's good. At least you found out early. So, and that kind of leads into the next thing I was going to ask you about, the Roswell episode so when you talked to that rancher and you took him back out to the property, and when they were saying cut the cameras, he was saying cut the cameras and all that. So none of that was scripted at all.
I wish I could tell you exactly what happened. Yes, the cameras were cut. Not because of what you think.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, let's just say he didn't realize he was still mic'd. Well, he was mic'd, but he didn't realize he was still active. And there was something going on in the background that was dangerous.
Really?
Yeah. And we decided, almost to the point where, let's just say, if they find anything, should we kill them? Type of thing. Not exactly, but
yeah.
But because we were getting close to, if in fact there really was UFO Roswell debris there, and we found it, these guys or the other,
well,
the owners or whatever, they would want it. So
Well, you ended up getting your hands on some eventually, didn't you? Some of the debris. You have it right there. Look at that.
okay, so now I don't want to say that's exactly what happened, but there were some threats, and it was pretty dangerous threats. And because we have a film crew and we have the team, of course, Dan and I were both carrying anyway. So we don't care. Any threat we would take care of. That happened. Oh my God, that happened in Missouri too. So we were in Missouri shooting, and we're near the Merrimack River. I used to live in Missouri when I was a kid, and in that general area, and fished the Merrimack River. You don't want to catch any fish, you don't want to keep them, but the pike are fun, to catch pike. And it's an idiot, 2 houses down. My God, we're out there shooting, and he's shooting. So we're shooting the TV show, and he's shooting towards us with a rifle. I don't know what the hell he was doing. Now, the bullets weren't like whizzing by us, but they were popping off at a distance, and I could tell they were going past us, but not real close. So I don't know what the hell his problem was. Like, didn't want us there, or he's just being a knucklehead or whatever. But while we were filming and that shooting, we dropped. Dan and I had everybody drop down. I stayed back. And I had pulled my gun out because I didn't know what the hell was going on. And Dan took off towards that direction to see if where it was coming from, and so we found out who it was. And then the next day, Dan and I didn't go talk to him because they didn't want us to, because we were already kind of upset. So the director went over and talked to him, and he says, it was just a 22, and I was just out screwing with you guys. I would never hurt you or anything. And they turned, and they came back to me, or the director came back to me, and it was with one of the other guys who was on the film crew that was like 6'4", 6'5". He was a big boy. And he took him with him because in case he needed a bouncer. And he came back and said, he said that he was just screwing around. And he said, but you should have seen the look on his face when he found out that you and Dan had guns on him. And it was like the deer light in a hook. He didn't realize that there was 2 guns pointed back at him. He thought he was in control. He wasn't in control. He thought he was in control. After that, we had no problem with that guy for the rest of the shoot. So not only do you have to worry about the UFOs and aliens and Bigfoot and ghosts,
the government, and
the knucklehead
nut job shooting behind you.
The guys over in Roswell, the guys Corona actually, and the guy in Missouri, and just you got these knucklehead people. Of course, we know about knucklehead people. What happened in Minnesota? I mean, there's crazies out there. And unfortunately, as a UFO investigator, you do run across crazies that take everything to the extreme. So much so that I see aliens all the time. Well, can you get me a picture? Well, no, they won't let me take pictures of, but they're there. Well, you have to prove it. Were you calling me a liar? I'm just saying you don't have evidence. I can't say you're a liar. I just can't prove you're telling the truth. Sorry, that's just that you have to be analytical about this stuff. So back to this little piece here. So I can barely see it because I can see.
I see it in the bottom of the veil, the glass down there.
So years ago, back in 2000 or so, I did a archaeology dig with the Sci-Fi Channel for one of their TV shows, and my sister was with me at the time because she came with me up to Roswell, and they asked us because we were interested. And I've been investigating Roswell for years. That's my first investigation I did when I was in California, was Roswell, and I got to meet, and I became friends with Glenn Dennis and Hot and a few other people that were actually alive in 47 that were, eyewitnesses. So Walter Hott. And so I'd go back and I'd be talking to Glenn Dennis and Walt in the museum. And at that time they were running it. And then Don Schmidt was there, and they were doing a TV show for Sci-Fi Channel, and they needed some amateur archaeologists. And my sister and I were there saying, we can do that shit. So we came back and we were in a TV show, but we were there to look for evidence. They were there to shoot a TV show, Don Schmidt and Tom Carey. And I mean, they had their own evidence, stuff that they want to do. So I'm not saying, they did anything wrong. They didn't. But I was there to look for hard evidence, and I knew exactly where I wanted to look. So we became, we were doing the digging, and we were digging way, way too deep. I was joking. I said, we're digging to the Jurassic period. We don't need to dig this far. We just need to go back to 1947. But they had us digging for other reasons in the wrong place. And I said the wrong place. And they go, no, this is where the skip happened, because we were at the debris site where there's a skip.
Where the initial hit was. Is that where you were
and that's
investigating?
for people that don't understand Roswell, that what it was. I'm trying to see my screen. I don't know. I got cut off on my screen, but the ship came down and skipped off the ground like you would take a Frisbee and skip it off a sidewalk.
Right.
Okay. And then 17 miles later, the Frisbee came down and landed. Okay. So that's what happened. So the impact site was 17 miles from the skip site, based on eyewitness reports. And I actually interviewed an eyewitness, and I have a general idea of where the crash site, the initial crash site is. I've already been there.
And this was actually in Corona, right? Not everybody thinks it's Roswell. It was in Corona, right?
No, the skip site is in Corona. The crash site is over on the other side of Boy Scout Mountains.
Okay.
Which is way outside, 17 miles away from Corona. And I just gave you a little tip there that I usually don't tell people.
Pack up and head to New Mexico, right?
for your audience. Anyway, so we found, I don't know if I can stop that thing from happening.
Oh, you're good.
So we were there for a week and doing all this goofy stuff in the wrong place. I mean, we were at the skip site, no doubt. We were there, and it was awesome and totally cool. But in my opinion, that's not where the debris is. And you go, well, wait, well, why? Because the debris was there. Well, because the story goes that after the military, picked up everything they could, then they went over with a bulldozer and they da-da-da-da-da-da. That's what Don Smith and Tom Carey wanted us to dig so deep for, because they wanted to see if there was a wedge that was covered up.
Where they'd covered it up, yeah.
Where exactly. They covered up. That was what I didn't want. So the filming was over, and I had talked with, oh my gosh, Dr. Dolman, the archaeologist, late. We had a heated conversation, 1:30 in the morning in Roswell, in an empty parking lot outside a steak shop. And I said, you guys just wasted 5 days of our time, because we didn't find anything and we were in the wrong place. And he goes, well, I'm an archaeologist and this and that, and I said, but you're not a UFO archaeologist. You're not a UFO investigator, And I mean, there were some colorful metaphors that were going back and forth. I got a PhD. And I go, you don't have a PhD in UFO investigations, and
gotta love that type, right?
We were just hitting it hard back and forth at 1:30 in the morning. He says, do you think you're so good? Da, 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 da. Meet me at the gas station tomorrow morning at 5:30, because I got to go out there and do some cleanup, and put everything back the way it was. And so you had to be out there the next day. I said, okay, we'll be there. And so, like 3 hours sleep. And then we met up at the gas station. He was surprised to see us, me and my sister, and we drove back out to the debris site. And then all of a sudden he started thinking differently about me, because he started thinking, okay, maybe this guy's serious. Maybe he's not just a dick, but, maybe there's something to this. I don't know. And so I got a little tiny respect from him at that point. And then so when we got to the debris site, I pulled an old Captain Kirk on him, because I'm a Star Trekkie, right?
I am too. Nothing wrong with that.
So I pulled a Captain Kirk to Spock. I said, give me your best guess, Mr. Spock. So I said, give me your best guess, Dr. Dolman, of where the debris would be now after 60-some years of erosion, rain, wind. You know this desert a lot better than anybody does, because you're an archaeologist here. Tell me where the water would settle. No one thought of that. It's so obvious to me, though, because the people don't think about erosion. They just think that, whatever had happened, that's exactly where it's going to
Right.
be. Well, that's
Right.
not the case. I thought. So it is now, but I'll have to tell you why. So he took his satellite maps, or no, his BLM maps, that were taken by high altitude airplanes and stuff. And he's looking at, from the 50s and stuff. He says, well, based on the map and on these pictures, the BLM pictures that were taken from high altitude airplanes, this area over here, which is like 20 yards away from where we're digging, he says this is where water would settle. I said, that's where I want to dig. He says, well, what type of digging do you want to do? I said, I had a Zazi dig in Arizona. My wife and I did a couple of years back, and we did these strip digs, where you do a 1 meter by 5 meter strips, and you only go down 6 to 8 inches. That's all I need to do. I don't need to dig down the Jurassic period. I just want to know where it would settle over the years. And in the second dig, we found this little piece of metal. I just started a second one, so I was doing the digging, and my sister Debbie was sifting it. And it was the size of your little finger nail, and it was triangular, not a perfect triangle, but it was triangular. And it was extremely light. The slightest breeze would blow it out of your hand. And when she held it in the palm of her hand, all 3 corners of the triangle rolled up. So it was conducive to sun or heat or solar radiation, but whatever it was, it caused it, because when we put it back, if we put it inside a little manila envelope and take it back out again, it was flat. But as soon as you put it to sunlight, it rolls up. So we go, electromagnetic. Oh, this is cool. So we bagged it, and it became some of the artifacts. Now, because it was a sanctioned archaeology dig with the Sci-Fi Channel and the museum, that artifact went with the other artifacts that we found, which wasn't anything close to what Jesse Marcel Jr. saw, or Jesse Marcel, his father. So it took a couple of years for me to track down that little piece of metal, and I found it at the Maxwell Museum Archive Center in Albuquerque. I got a hold of Dr. Dolman, and he was able to track it down in the archives to see where it was. And I said, I have access to a scanning electron microscope, because I was working for a company at the time that happened to have one for microchips. And it just so happens that the operator of the microscope was a UFO enthusiast. So we got along great. So I said, I want to come down to the museum, or the Maxwell Museum. I want to pick it up. And yeah, I talked to him a week later about it. I want to come down and pick it up. He goes, oh, no, I already mailed it to you. I went, huh?
He dropped it in the mail.
You mailed
Just in
this
an
to
envelope,
me?
just in a regular envelope.
Yes.
PhD guys, right?
Oh my God. It's so funny. So funny. And there's a lot of funny stuff when you get involved in doing this. And I got it. And I got it. And so,
You wouldn't have got it if you got it from today's post office. That's for
oh,
sure.
man. Oh no, geez. So for the next week or so after work, not during working hours, after work, I was down in the scan electron microscope, and it turned out, see, now they had all the little pieces. They had a lab somewhere look at all the pieces, and they paid the lab guys like $25 a piece, or $25 per piece, to tell us what you think. When they looked at that particular piece, they said, well, it could be by a biological, like a wing from an insect.
They said it could be biological.
They said it could be biological because it looked like a wing from an insect, or it could be, or if it's not, it's an aluminum, like from from a gum wrapper. And so that's what they said. So we had it analyzed, and it was an aluminum alloy with trace elements of titanium and a couple other things. But
Never
it
seen
was
aluminum do
aluminum
this.
alloy, yeah, aluminum alloy, and it was aluminum alloy, which didn't fall into the category of common aluminum alloys at the time, from what we saw. So you could rule out aluminum foil, you could rule out bubblegum wrappers, cigarette, whatever, all that
So was
stuff.
everything they found on this, was everything in the what we know of the periodic table? Was this all known elements, or was there?
Yeah. Oh yeah, and I
It was
can
everything that we know about in our on
yeah, and
Earth.
I can kind of explain that too. I'll do it right now, real quick. Pretty much everything that's hit this planet, mineral wise, meteorites, whatever, micrometeorites, all the elements have fallen into our periodic table. So it's not so much the elements as it is how it was made, right? It's elements, because all our elements are very, very plentiful in outer space. So if you're coming from outer space, chances are you're using the same elements that we are using. Of course, they're called differently from, the aliens probably call them, different.
Right.
But, but it's the same stuff. So I sat on this and I wanted to do further investigations and research on it. But I took it back. I drove back to Albuquerque and I delivered it back because I had to, because I only had it for a couple of weeks per the contract I signed with the museum, and or the agreement. And so I did a press release that year in July at Roswell asking for professional help to have this analyzed, because I went as far as I could go with the electron scanning microscope or SEM scanning electron microscope. And who do you think popped up and said, my lab will do it? Robert Bigelow.
Bigelow Aerospace,
Bigelow Aerospace, Bass.
the original owner of Skinwalker Ranch.
Now,
Well, not the original, but
now this was a few years before we found out that Bigelow was getting that money, that budget from the Pentagon for UFO investigations.
that was the NIDS stuff, right?
Yeah, he's the one that got the millions and millions of dollars from the Pentagon. That was Robert Bigelow. At that time, I knew Robert. That's another long story, but I was assistant state director for MUFON at the time in Colorado. And I found evidence because I was one of the very first investigators for MUFON Star Team. I found evidence that Robert Bigelow was funneling money in from somewhere to fund the Star Team. And I don't mind saying this public. We kind of said it in the 37th Paranormal book. I just didn't mention his name. But since it came out public in 2017 that it was him, I can say whatever I want now. There's nothing you do about it. So the money that he was giving to MUFON for the Star Team, which is the rapid response team, it appeared to be coming from the government. That's what I found out. I later was able to clarify that with some higher ups that in MUFON at the time, because I told them, hey, what are you guys doing? What do you mean? I go, blah, blah, blah. And, oh shit, yeah. Well, it's only because okay, fine. But so I knew it was him, so anyway, so now I'm asking Bigelow, which I didn't really want to, but I go, hey, what the hell? He's the only one that came to the table.
Guy's got the resources to do it. Okay,
so this is exactly what happened. And I actually have the email. I actually posted it on one of my blogs. So I sent him the piece. No, I did not. It took another 2-3 months of me convincing the National Museum that we needed to send Robert Bigelow Bass the piece to have it analyzed. So I did all the paperwork myself. I figured out what I had to do. I do all the paperwork, and then I had them cut a slice and give him a slice, and not the whole piece. So it was just a half of
Smart.
is what he got, because you don't
want it
know.
to disappear.
You don't want it to disappear.
Yeah.
Exactly. So within the first week of him having it, cross my heart, I got this email, and like I said, I posted it on one of my blogs, that it said that it appears to be an unknown polymer based on the polymers we have already cataloged in our computers. So it doesn't mean that it's not from this earth. It just means the computer can identify it as a known polymer. That's huge. That's extremely huge. Right there, it's extremely huge. Oh my God, I got a piece of metal from the Roswell debris site That's not common. Now, if anybody has been investigating or researching Roswell, they know that it wasn't a high altitude balloon. It turned out to be a Project blah, 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 what the Air Force said, which was a high altitude.
The weather balloon or whatever.
It was a high altitude balloon that was basically monitoring any atomic bomb explosions from China or Russia, whatever. The project was top secret. The balloon was polyurethane, whatever it was. I can't know exactly, but whatever, it was a common high altitude balloon that they use for high altitude weather balloons. And the electronics, let's just say you could have built the thing by using components from Radio Shack. So there was no top secret.
Nothing exotic about it.
No. The only thing it was doing was picking up any high or any type of atomic bomb blasts above ground. And that's what it was picking up. That's what it was supposed to be doing. So the project was top secret. The components weren't. So now I have a piece of metal that is unidentifiable that that if it was part of Project Mogul, it would have been common back in 40s. That wasn't the case. So years go by, and we finally get a chance to go back out to the debris site. There's been some issues with the debris site because it's on BLM. There's been issues where ranchers have bought land around it and denied access to the debris site because people were and on and on, and it was on and on and on, and there was just a lot of stuff going on. And I knew that that's okay because it's not going away. And so finally got back down there again, and I hooked up with Frank Kimbler, who is an instructor at the military academy in Roswell. He's a geologist, and he teaches atmospheric classes. He's really, really good, smart guy. Turns out, after I met him, and I met him years ago because the book came out about the Roswell dig book came out, and it had pictures of the little piece. But anyway, it showed some of the photos and stuff, and he reverse engineered the book and figured out where it was. So he went to the site, and he's a metal detector enthusiast, and he had found a couple pieces. I went out there and found a couple pieces with him with his metal detector. My metal detector didn't work, and I learned why his was working and mine wasn't. And then I bought the proper metal detector, and so the next time I was out there, I found pieces too. So we found pieces under 4 inches of dirt, 6 to 8 inches of dirt, up to a foot of dirt. We found them in the area where the skip happened, and we found a couple of pieces in an area where we had done that dig, that strip dig. Okay, so far up to date, as of earlier this year, we've had 4 pieces analyzed by 4 labs in 4 different states: New Mexico, Colorado, Texas, and California. 4 different labs. They all come up with the same conclusion. It is a non-registered, this piece right here, because this is the one I had analyzed. That's right there, and you can see this is a non-registered aluminum alloy, which means the computers now, 2025, their catalogs of
Still don't know what it is.
They cannot identify this piece of metal as something you can purchase. I have to say that. Okay, it could be a top secret metal, which
Right.
there are top secret alloys out there that we can't buy. Okay, but are they top secret alloys that you can't buy that we found under 6 to 12 inches of dirt out in the middle of the New Mexico desert at the exact location where eyewitnesses claim a UFO hit? Okay, now that adds more to the mystery. Now, if you follow Lieutenant Philip Corso's book, The Day After Roswell, I was able to grab, I know someone who interviewed him, and I was able to grab an actual transcript from the interview. And so I had the actual transcript. I could read what his own words before it got filtered and printed out, right? So, he was saying that, he worked for, I forget if it was General Trudeau. It's been such a long time since I've touched on this. But he was working for a general at the time, and he was in charge of reverse engineering debris from Roswell. This is what the book's about. And so the only way you can figure that out is and which would make sense, because this is in the early 50s now, that he would give these pieces of debris that they got from the debris site in 47, and they would give it out to those companies and those universities that had top secret military contracts with them. Makes sense, because you already have a contract with these people. They already signed the confidentiality and the top secret, whatever. So it would make sense. And that's what they did. He's the one that said fiber optics, night vision, microchips came from this 47. Now, if metal was found there and it's an alloy, then could have came from something that crashed there, or could have been something that the military put, whatever. And I can tell you the answer. All 4 labs, 4 different states, the lab techs, the one that I took it to in Colorado, they were aluminum specialists. And he's the one that told me first. I told Frank, and then I had him ask the lab guys, and then we did the same thing on the other 2. They all say the same exact thing. Whatever caused this little piece of debris was explosive in nature. It was an above the ground explosion that caused this little fragment. And the way that we can prove that is because you can see the way that under a microscope, and people want to go to my website. Oh, I think I released pictures of it back on June 23rd, 2023. If you want to go down to the website, and you'll see this, zoom in pictures of this thing. Even I got pictures of 50 microns, which is 1 times 6 to the minus 10th or minus 9th. And the folds, the holes, the explosions, the melting on the edges in some cases, it was whatever caused it, it was an explosion. So could that have been Project Mogul coming down and hitting the ground and breaking apart? No, it was something that exploded in the air and splattered on the ground. And because they're so small that modern day metal detectors, specific metal detectors looking for specific things, can find them. Not all metal detectors. Back in the day, they had metal detectors, but they were usually for magnets, and they were used for mining, for mines, to sweep for looking for mines. And so they had metal detectors out there, but the pieces of metal would have to be extremely large, and then the chances of it being a type of an alloy like that being picked up by their metal detector was probably not, 0, because it wasn't designed to pick up alloys. It was designed to pick up iron or whatever their metal detectors were using during World War II. So I can tell you something exploded there. I can tell you something crashed there. Guaranteed, 100%, no doubt, no arguments.
Something that we don't know what it is.
I can't tell you.
We cannot be identified by science today.
Well, it's identified. It just can't be bought on the commercial market. Okay, yeah, but I can guarantee you that the pieces that we had analyzed were caused due to an explosion. And we put it's all on the blog. It's all on my website. If you go to ufonut.com, you'll see, and then just scroll down through the blogs, and you'll come across one that says press release, piece of metal found in 1947. And then I got other pictures. I post the pictures. Not only did I post the pictures, I post the lab results. This is one thing that I was doing with Alien Highway. All the information that we find, everything that I've always done on my website, I put out to the public for free. I don't charge anybody to go to the website, unlike Linda Moulton Howe and all these other people that you have to pay a fee to read their stuff. Why? Because they make money off of this. That's how their income, they get their income is off their websites, right? I have a job. So my income pays for my hobbies, which includes my website. So I put the information out there to the public. Now, by putting the information out to the public, cattle mutilations or aliens or whatever, it's up to the person who reads the blogs to make your own decisions, to make up your own
Absolutely.
mind. I'm not trying to persuade anybody. I can tell you without a shadow of doubt that I have the evidence to prove that something crashed there. There's no doubt about it. Don't care, no argument. We have the evidence. You can't argue that, that this is a cell phone. No, it's not. No, it's a cell phone. Sorry. You lost that argument. So something did crash there. I just can't say it was a UFO because we don't know what it was, but I can't tell you it's alien or ET in origin. That's the truth. I can't make that claim. I can just say that I can guarantee something crashed there. Now, knowing that something crashed there, now you start thinking about, I met a lady, her name's Gail. She's long since passed because I met her years ago in Colorado. That had to be 20 years ago. And she lived in the area where the craft came down and impacted. She didn't know what it was, but it was 17 miles from the debris site, and it was private property. They were living on private property, and lo and behold, a week or so after, July or whatever, or in that time frame, a military caravan forced everybody, and they had a row of houses in that, and they forced everybody to go in their house. They had armed guards, and they took this caravan down the street about a mile and a half or so, and they were there for a couple of days, and then they came back, and and everything was covered up. Well, of course, the trucks, that covers on them anyway, so you wouldn't tell. And once again, everybody was forced to say, so you have two instances here. I can guarantee something impacted at the debris site based on the GPS coordinates of where Gail said this happened and where the debris site is, and the Jim Ragsdale sighting, which no one ever talks about. Jim Ragsdale, he was up in Boy Scout Mountain, and the story behind Jim Ragsdale is the he saw something crash off in the distance or whatever while he was in the back of his pickup truck with a girl. Okay, so and that's why they were on their backs looking at the stars, buck naked basically, and they saw something. But so based on, and most investigators say that they don't believe Jim Ragsdale, but it's interesting though, and I keep Jim Ragsdale's sighting I keep it on on notes type of thing. I don't totally disregard it. The reason why is because I had GPS coordinates of the debris site. I have GPS coordinates of the Jim Ragsdale site because I took my sister there in my Jeep. One time we were lecturing at Roswell, and we barely made it up there in the Jeep. It was that bad of a trail. And then I have GPS coordinates because I've been there a couple of times to where I think the crash site is. And when you look at all 3 points on your GPS, it's a straight line. Yes, that's not curvy. It's a straight line. So in between the debris site and the crash site is the Jim Ragsdale site. So because of that, I have to consider Jim Ragsdale's story as plausible.
Credible.
Because he's in the parameters. I mean, he's the data shows that he was in the area. Yeah. So but this is cool because when you think analytically, and I've been really lucky because of my microchip design, because you have to think analytically when you're doing that stuff. You try to keep all your evidence analytically too. Now, by doing that, what you're doing is you're eliminating all the debunkers and the skeptics to try and give false narratives and stuff. By me posting everything that I've learned about cattle mutilations and 37th parallel and Roswell on my website, the skeptics and the debunkers can read it all. Okay, they could say, well, I don't believe that. That's fine. That's fine.
And they don't have to believe it, right?
Oh, that's okay, but the data's there.
Yep.
Okay, and I'm not telling anybody they have to believe me. I'm just saying this is what I found as an investigator. This is what I've released to the public. It's up to you. You like it, you don't like it. Data's there. It's going to be there for a while. It has been there for a while. And as I learn more, So we now, because of those we have more pieces, and we can go back and we know where to find more pieces, and we know what type of metal detectors we have to use, and da da da. But the next thing we're doing is we're trying to locate a lab that will tell us whether or not it came from this planet, the alloy, which you can. There's certain things that they can do that will tell us that this came from a meteorite, let's say, or something like that. They can tell you that. And but it's expensive, really expensive. And so we're in the process right now of trying to figure out to have the test done, just one part of the test, just enough to tell us whether or not it can be identified. The other problem, and people are out there going, well, why did you just do it? Well, because there's a procedure of doing this with metals like this that you found, that you have to be there. You have to physically take it to the lab. You have to go in the lab and you have to watch them. And you have to take pictures. You have to make sure nothing was switched. You have to make sure that, that they did exactly what they did. That's what we've done so far. Now, there's not a lot of labs that will let you come in and watch them while they do their work, so it's tough. It's a tough thing to do. You would have to basically, unless you know someone that works in the lab and you trust them a lot, that you could hand it off to them and say, hey, can you give it back to me, type of stuff. But when you're just taking it to a lab, and we've been lucky so far, the labs that we found, we've been able to go in and be with them. Yeah. So actually 3 out of 4. One of them, we couldn't do that, but we already had, but the fourth one was a test case. So we had 3 labs that we did that with. The fourth one, we delivered it to a lab, but we couldn't be in there, and we had to go back and get it. The results were the same. So by them telling us, and they had no idea what we were giving them, they had no idea what the results would be or anything. They just said, here's a piece of metal, tell us what you can, and the results came back. So all 4 results were the same. So they told us that, oh, cool. So this lab we could trust, So so if we decide to go back, we can't, because they can't do the next lab analysis that we want done. So we're doing.
We can't wait to see the results.
Well,
hopefully
yeah.
Hopefully we'll get those sooner than later. So,
well, if the results turn out to be something way exotic, then I'll probably be sitting in one of the disclosure meetings in Congress.
That's funny you say that, because that was the next thing I was going to ask you about, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this, because we're hearing all of a sudden so much about the government and disclosure. Anna Paulina Luna, Eric Burleson, Tim Burchett, some of these people in Congress are beating the drum for disclosure. We're having all these hearings. All this stuff seems to be a process and happening. Do you think this is just a smoke screen, or they just, blowing smoke, or, do they really want the public to know, and are we ever going to know what the government?
I think that's the wrong people. I think the senators are, they're genuinely excited, because one of them was the Colorado senator. I forget her name. She's the one that carries a gun, and
Lauren Boebert.
Yeah, she's cool.
Yeah, she's a congresswoman. She's
yeah. And I'm not saying that what's his name? Alessandro. I forget his name.
Louis Alessandro.
Yeah. I mean, some of these guys, I have a lot of respect for them, but I don't, and I do. Every time they open their mouth and with something good, and then a senator Congress says, well, I'd like to see proof. Well, I can't tell you. I'll have to show you off. We'll have to meet. I'll have to get you that evidence. I watched one full, and I just was so disappointed, because it seemed like a couple of guys there were more promoting. Well, in my book, I mentioned this, and in my book, you get that wrong people. They need the boots on the ground people, the field investigators that have seen things firsthand, that have the evidence and say, look, here you go. Tell me what it is. They don't need these people. Well, I can tell you right now, for all you listeners out there, okay, I've signed so many confidentiality documents, contracts. I just finished one off. Matter of fact, with this company that I just finished with, all we did was, this project was only a 1 month project, but it was feasibility. It was whether or not this company could make this chip. So it was 1 month of just a bunch of engineers getting together, and I was representing the IC Mass Design guys. So on my resume, it says, okay, 1 month, I was with this company, it was feasibility, and guess what? I can't tell you what it was about. It's proprietary because they're designing a chip, and I can't tell you what the chip is. I can't tell you anything because I signed non-disclosure. So now you're working for the CIA, right? And the CIA, if you ever hear anybody that says that they were working for the federal government, and while they were there, they saw pictures of a UFO, they're lying. I'll tell you why. Because if they were telling them the truth, if they were saying or telling you the truth, they just violated their a federal confidentiality, right, agreement, which means they can go to jail. Done. That's all it is. So now with me, if I release information about the company and what we did, it's a fine. It may not be jail time, but I'll get sued. Blah blah blah. I mean, it'll be ridiculous. But if you're working for the federal government and you start, talking about top secret stuff that you saw, dude, you signed an agreement not to do that. So anytime and there's a couple of these TV shows where, I'm a former CIA, and I saw pictures of that. Screw you, you did not. You're lying. If you're not lying, then you tell us the name of the person that gave you permission to go public with this. Well, I can't tell you that. It's a dead end. You're a dead end. You can't come up with the proof. All you say is, when I saw it's a good story, but that's all it is. It's a good story. Even if you did, it's still a good story. But still, I had secret security clearance at McDonnell Douglas years ago. I see some stuff that Douglas was doing. God, I was out of high school. I had secret security clearance. There's some things I saw there I can't tell you about even now because I signed. But if I went public,
well, between that and half the people are just scared to death, that for their safety, frankly.
Well, nowadays if it's a federal, nowadays you're gonna go to jail. You can go to jail for a year now if you burn an American flag.
Right.
And that's nowhere near giving away top secret information. A matter of fact, they just found a Chinese engineer, or Chinese somebody. They caught him at the airport just a couple of days ago that stole proprietary information from the company that he was working for. He's here on a working visa, and that's not the first time China has been caught doing this. China,
absolutely not.
I wouldn't trust China as far as I could throw an elephant.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, 100%. But then again, you have to understand they're communists. People go, "Oh, you can't say that about China. They're communists."
I did a show about all the land they're buying up all around all our military bases and everything.
It's so. I know, and people go, "Oh my God, really?" Because if anything happens, we just land grabbed it back from them, and they just lost out, and deported. That's just the way it is.
Right.
So I wouldn't worry about it. Yeah, I would worry about it if they're buying land next to a, military base. No foreign country should do that.
No foreign country should be allowed to do that.
But especially China, because they are well known for stealing our technology. Heck, at one point, remember our space shuttle? They had their own space shuttle. It was almost identical to ours. Couldn't fly. But you actually took a look at it. Or was it Russia? Maybe it was Russia that had it. One of the two had it. Almost identical. But anyway, so now what was I talking about?
We were talking about disclosure.
Oh yeah, the disclosure.
Where we started with this.
Yeah. So to sum up with disclosure, and like I said, if you see anybody on any of these TV shows that said I was former federal agent and I saw this, just turn it off because they're all lying to you. Unless they say, and General or Captain so-and-so, gave me permission. Because remember that whole Bob Lazar thing? Right?
Oh, yeah.
Bob Lazar
Everybody knows about Bob Lazar.
Bob Lazar worked at S4, outside of Area 51. Um, and for the longest time, he said, he came public. I said, I worked there. No, we can't find any proof that you worked there. You're a liar. I was good friends with Stanton Friedman before he passed away. Oh, well, I guess I could still be good friends with him if I can find his spirit somewhere. But it got to one point where Stanton Friedman was actually able to find, and this is cool because when I worked at Rockwell years and years ago, every quarterly Rockwell had an internal phone book, and the internal phone book changed every quarter because people would come and people would go. Okay, so one of the companies that Bob Lazar said he worked at, they found a quarterly phone book and his name in it, even though the company says he never worked here, but his name's in the phone book. So, so we know that there's some validity to what Bob Lazar was saying. Now, even though you may not agree with everything he's saying, you have to at least agree to the one point that, yes, in fact, he worked at that one place that they claimed he never worked at. So why would they claim he never worked there, if in fact he did? So you have to think about that. So now you got to think, okay, well, maybe there's more to Bob Lazar's story than. Now, I've seen Area 51. Back in the day when I was in California, I hired a guide, and we were going to go to Freedom Ridge, and I was going to Freedom Ridge and take pictures because I had a cool Minolta with a 300 millimeter zoom lens. It was so cool. And just about 2 weeks before I was supposed to go, Nellis Air Force Base came in and they land grabbed Freedom Ridge.
Yeah, you can't go up there anymore, right?
No, but somebody down there started to cut a trail up Tigaboo Peak, which is a little further back, and it was still on public land. So when I had talked to the guy says, well, we could get up Tigaboo Peak now, but it's a really rough trail because it's not really designed that people are still making the trail. And I said, I'll give it a shot. So, I went and there was a little RV park outside somewhere near the little alien, and met with a guide, and a couple of other people just happened to show up. Can we come along too? Like, well, who the hell are you guys? I paid for this, but oh, sure, the more the merrier. Why not? Well, one guy turned out to be an Nellis Air Force agent or military person that was there to find out what I was doing and why I was interested. So they were monitoring the phone calls and the emails from the person that in Rachel, Nevada, that I was communicating with. So anyway, we hiked up the top of Tigaboo Peak, and it's like, I don't know, 19, 20 miles away. And I was able to see Area 51 off at a distance. And one of the pictures I took, there's something shooting across the sky. And it was going so fast that even with the Minolta camera that I had, it's kind of a streak. So that's pretty cool. And that was during the daytime. So and I show that picture every now and then. But so I got to see Area 51. And then one of the TV shows I did, we drove up to the west gate of Area 51, and I shot some pictures of Area 51. And then with Alien Highway, we were in Tonopah, and we were close to one of the other gates of Area 51, but they didn't want to go over there. I wanted to go over there, but oh no, we're not going to go there. so they didn't.
I don't personally think that they're keeping anything good in Area 51 because people know about Area 51.
Yeah,
if there's anything good, it's somewhere that they don't know about. It's my two cents.
Pine Bluff, Australia.
I've heard of Pine Bluff, Australia. There's always been rumors about the Dulce base. You hear about all these things, but I think there's probably someplace, Antarctica or somewhere, where it's inaccessible that people can't get to is where they're keeping the good stuff. At least that's my sense anyway.
When I came out with my press release on, actually it was, let's see if I have it here. I was trying to get I was 37th degree latitude. So my 37th parallel theory, I did a press release on that back on September 15th, 2011. So I was shooting a little bit of a segment for an episode on Unexplained Files Season 1. And it was on cattle mutilations. And I think it was on cattle mutilations. Yeah, because I was in Trinidad area. And towards the end of my 10-minute segment or whatever, I had a map out. And I'm going, you know what's really interesting about this? I have a theory, 37th degree latitude theory, that that when the mutilations happen here on a 37th degree latitude, they happen in other states or they happened in other ranches on the same latitude, pretty close. Not exact, pretty close. And almost like a paranormal highway. And I mentioned that 30 seconds towards the end of my segment on season 1. Well, they got approved for season 2. This is with the Science Channel now. Okay, not sci-fi, science channel.
I remember that show. I've seen that show.
Yeah, they're a little more strict. So they contacted me and said, hey, what's this 37th degree latitude theory? It looks kind of interesting. Do you have any data to back that up? I'm going, yeah.
Sure.
I just dumped all my data. And then about 2 weeks later, I got a call from him going, how would you like to do your own episode on a 37th degree latitude? I'm going, not a segment. I get a whole 1 hour episode. And they go, yep. And you guys to decide what you want to do, where you want to go. I'm like, oh my God, that's like being in a candy shop, you know? I'm like,
and was this pre-Alien Highway or?
Yeah, this is pre-Alien Highway.
Okay.
So they said, you get to do whatever you want to do. And they gave me a production crew, Raw TV, that they were out of England at the time. But since then, I think they were bought by a company out here. And so I go, okay, well, I want to go here. You know, I want to go to Missouri or whatever. And I want to go to Colorado. And I want to go to Nevada. And I'll go to New Mexico. And I want to go. And when I'm in New Mexico, I want to go to Dulce, because Dulce is on the 37th degree latitude. That's part of my theory. They said, wait. So we went to, so now we're going to Dulce. So went to Dulce, and I got to interview people there. So cool, because I've been really, really lucky to interview our Native Americans, especially the ones that bring the stories from generations. You'd be surprised the stuff they can tell you.
And the stuff it doesn't change too.
No,
that's the thing.
changed.
Like their stories are passed down, and there's no loss in translation with any of it. It's all consistent.
Oh no, never changes.
How they tell it.
Never changes. So it's interesting though. So we drove up. At the time I had a Nissan Frontier 4x4, and they called it the Back to the Future truck because it looked like the
DeLorean or whatever.
No, the truck. It looked like, what's his name's truck? The kid. Oh, I just drew a blank. Oh my God. Anyway.
Talking about Michael J. Fox.
Yeah. His truck. Remember his truck? That's what it looked like. You know, with the lights and the
oh,
bar. Yeah. So they called it the Michael J. Fox truck, or the Back to the Future truck. And so we 4x'd up, one of the roads, Fire Road or whatever, up Dulce Mountain with a representative from, I think it was with the Apache Nation, and then a representative with the BLM. And it was kind of rough. There was a couple 4x's behind us. We passed a Land Cruiser that didn't make it. It broke an axle. So much for Land Cruisers being better than a Nissan.
Right.
Nissan just walked a Land Cruiser. It's so funny. And we got to the top. And so we got as far as we could go based on what they told us where the base is. Now, the base is not on the New Mexico side, because when you get to the top of Dulce Mountain, you go across a bit. There's a big fence there. I can't remember. Is it Colorado? Is it the Ute Indians?
Yeah, I think it's the Utes. I believe. Yeah. So
the Ute Indians on the other side, and they're on the Colorado side. So you would have to get permission from them, But we went as far as we could go. Now, when you go to Dulce and you talk to the natives there, and I mean natives, the people that were born there, and then the Native Americans, they'll tell you the same thing. They'll tell you there is a base there. Number one, no doubt, there is a base there. Now, depending on who you talk to, they'll say it's an alien human base or it's a human base. Okay, so that's almost 50-50. But doesn't matter who you talk to, there's a base there.
I've heard some wild stories about that Dulce base.
Yeah, well, see, so because of Dulce Base, I got to go interview Roger Lear in Las Vegas from Lear Jets, right? And he's the one that released the Dulce Papers. So that's why I got to go interview him. And he was just phenomenal, just such a cool guy. And then he flew former CIA. He flew for the CIA. So he flew missions for him with a Lear jet, and he had this great story of seeing these holographic images near Area 51, where he was flying near Area 51. He had some really, really good stories, stuff that he's seen at 51. So yes, Area 51. Do I think S4? I mean, S4 could still be there. I mean, there's. I talked to a reporter the other day that that's in the area last week to do a story on that whole area because they're still getting sightings in that area because of 51. But I think, yeah, maybe if you really had some stuff you didn't want people to get to, it'd probably be Pine Gap, Australia, which is out in the middle of the outback. So it's, it makes it really hard. But you have to understand where Area 51 came from. So based on my experience with Roswell and what I've learned in research with Roswell, the debris from Roswell went to Wright Field. Wright Field's in Ohio.
Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Wright-Patterson.
Yeah.
But see, Wright wasn't called Wright-Patterson back then. It was called Wright Field. And the reason why they call that is because they had two landing strips. So one was Wright, and then the second one was Patterson. And then they started calling it Wright-Patterson. So back in the day, it was called Wright Field. Well, why would you take it to Wright Field? Because that was the only base that had a foreign technology department for reverse engineering. So during the war, that's where they would take
recovered enemy craft and things like that.
Craft and stuff like that, and they would reverse engineer it. So it had so that would make sense out of the whole U.S. Why would it go there? Well, because they already had a department there that had what they needed to reverse engineer stuff. So then all the pieces from Roswell went there, not all of them, but a lot of them went, and others went into storage somewhere, no, hangar, whatever. But anyway, and then they started, but they couldn't keep it there to reverse engineer it because Wright-Patterson Airfield, it's all being built up around them, housing, whatever. So that's when they decided to build Area 51 to go out somewhere in the desert that had water. People, well, there's nothing out there. Well, yeah, there is. There's a giant aquifer underneath area, that whole area.
Yeah, Groom Lake.
Yeah, but it's on an aquifer. So and that's part of the 37th parallel. On the 37th degree latitude, what makes it so unique is anybody can do this. So you can look on my website. I actually have the pictures. But if you look at the aquifers across the United States, you can see that if you go right down the middle on a 37th degree latitude, you can hit Area Major 1. And think, well, why is that important? Well, that's a whole other theory, a whole other story is hydrogen. But that's why Area 51 was built, so they could start reverse engineering the Roswell debris. And then one thing led to another, and then they had spacecraft there based on what Bob Lazar said, and and people seeing stuff there. And I can guarantee you that there's some high tech stuff there. There's
I'm sure, yeah. I mean, they developed the Blackbird and the F-117 and so many of the things we know about there. So I mean, there's some, and that was how many years ago? 25 years ago or whatever. There's no telling what kind of tech they've got there now. These drones that can perform all kinds of maneuvers, and I'm sure the stuff they got there is wild. What they say, military tech's always 25, 30 years ahead of civilian tech.
Yeah,
something like that.
Well, yeah, I would say now maybe 10 at the most, 5 to 8. It used to be, but now with our iPhones, I showed you the iPhone. So this device right here is more advanced than the space shuttle was.
True.
By far more advanced. So as we get more advanced with our computers, the technology is happening a lot faster. where back in the day it used to be. You're absolutely correct back in the day, but now it moves a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Now,
The AI scares me.
yeah, no, where the delay is production. You know, okay, I have a concept. Now I have to get money to build a prototype, and then once the prototype works, okay, now that's what takes the time. The years, but the ideas come pretty damn quick now. So
Right.
yeah, so so with Area 51, we knew that the debris was there. We, based on Bob Lazar, maybe they had, the sport model. Maybe they actually had some working models of UFOs that they were trying to reverse engineer, trying to get to work. Some other stories, if you look at the Dulce papers, the aliens were working with the humans. They're all good. They're all good stories. They're good stories. They're stories. But we can guarantee that I can't guarantee that Lazaro was at Area 51, but I can guarantee that based on that one evidence that he was at that one place that they said he wasn't. So that makes the rest of his story plausible, right?
I like to say the old saying, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
absolutely,
not
absolutely.
saying it's all true, but where there's smoke, there's fire
Oh yeah,
to
oh yeah,
some degree. So
yeah. So that was so that episode was called the Paranormal Highway of America, and for whatever stupid reason, after I don't know, they changed it to. I think the episode went overseas, and some idiot, and you're an idiot, whoever did it. it they took the word paranormal and changed it to haunted, and now it's called the Haunted Highway. The episode. Okay, now for everybody out there, sorry about this. For all you ghost hunters out there, you do not own the word paranormal. Paranormal does not mean just ghosts. Okay?
amen, brother.
Just forget that. If you're a paranormal investigator, if you say you're a paranormal investigator, that means you investigate not only ghosts, you investigate Mothman, you investigate
Cryptids, UAPs.
You investigate it all. You don't get to say you're a paranormal investigator if you're just doing ghosts. Just say you're a ghost investigator. If you're going to be specific, like Bigfoot investigators, they'll say they'll be very, very specific. I'm a Bigfoot investigator.
Right.
They don't say investigate UFOs. Okay, Bigfoot does fall into the paranormal because para means other than normal.
Right.
Bigfoot is still kind of, other than normal, although I think it's more normal and not paranormal. But, TV shows use that so loosely, and it's only because they don't know any better. They don't have anybody to tell them you're wrong. But it is what it is, and
That's right.
I go, all you gotta do is look it up. For God's sakes, if you don't believe me, just look up the word paranormal, and it comes from two different words. But
Well, I talk about it all in this show, Chuck. So I agree with you 100% because I talk about UFOs. I did a show about Bigfoot. Oh man, what else? I can't remember what all I've done now, but I agree 100%. Paranormal covers it all. So
it is paranormal covers it all, and it's a cool thing to be part of too, because I can't believe it. I was just talking to my wife earlier about this because I was telling her about the podcast that I would leave at night about maybe 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night by myself and drive 2.5 miles out to the desert or up in the forest or up in canyons or whatever by myself to investigate creatures. The flying winged people, aliens, cattle mutilations. Numerous times I've been by myself looking for Bigfoot at 10, 11,000 feet up in the mountains in Colorado. And now that I'm older, I'm thinking, what the hell was I doing?
well, you live in Texas now. So what's that little Texas song? What might have been? You imagine what might have been if you weren't doing this with your life right now.
That's the one thing that, I was telling my wife, because she goes, yeah, you must be ADD because you're always doing something. And I said, well, I'm always, like I was saying earlier, I always try to achieve something every day, learn something new, read something new, whatever. Even if you're just reading the news, it's new to you, right? Instead of watching I Love Lucy reruns or something like that you've seen before. But, so, and then I've always wanted to learn more. And then once I got, really got the paranormal bug as I got older, then that kind of took over a bit, that I knew, and I still know that, there's more in life than what you and I see. And I'm 100% positive that aliens are visiting this planet based on the evidence I've seen. Okay. And I've talked to so many different types of people, different backgrounds, different religions, different personalities, that say the same thing, that see the same thing in different parts of the U.S. I've communicated with the UFO 2016, July 3rd, outside of Roswell, where the Roswell Rock was found. That was my investigation of the Roswell Rock. And I communicated with the UFO. We were flashing lights back and forth, and then the kind of shit hit the fan. After that, things started happening, and high electromagnetic fields, and anyway, it goes on and on and on. I've filmed. They're not orbs; they're called balls of light. Now, orbs are what ghost investigators see. Orbs are more spiritual; you can kind of see them. The UFOs, if you want to go back to the Foo Fighters back in the 40s, our pilots, the Japanese pilots, they were being followed by these balls of light, and those were called Foo Fighters. Some of the GIs here in the U.S. or somebody nicknamed it Foo Fighter because where there's fire, there's foo. It was based on a comic book character at the time, and so they became Foo Fighters. And you can still see them today, and they're balls of light. Now the balls of light aren't just made of light. If they are light, it's intelligent light that carries some type of technology. And I mean by intelligent, it'd be artificial intelligence, not biological. Which you go, well, how can that be? Well, lasers, fiber optics. Okay, we send data every day through fiber optics. I'm talking to you right now on my Wi-Fi is on fiber optics. So it's high-speed internet, it's fiber optics. It's fiber optics, well, it's light. It's taking data. And right now it's taking video data back and forth, right? So yes, you can put data in light. So a ball of light from an advanced civilization could be programmed to do things. Why? Because we're almost there. Our technology is almost there doing that.
And they could be some kind of alien probes that are sent here to monitor us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They could be mechanical, but I can tell you this, and this is kind of cool, and I've mentioned this a few times. I never used to talk about it before, but I talk about it now, that a true UFO, I hate to say this because of CGI or artificial intelligence, now people are going to start copying it, but you can tell just by the light of a UFO if it's real or not. It's easy to tell. And maybe off camera, I'll tell you what it is, because if I tell you that, because right now we have so many knuckleheads out there that are making up UFO sightings, and what they're doing is they're just doing it for hits to their website or hits to their YouTube channel or hits to their TikTok, whatever. It's for money. It's just a money thing. It's all it is. They're using AI and CG to create stuff just so you can watch it over and over again. And they're making money off it. Now, I don't mind the AI Bigfoot and the AI aliens, and I love that stuff, but it's AI, and yeah, they're making money from you watching it, but for me, it's entertainment. You're watching a show, it's entertaining. They're not trying to tell you this is a real Bigfoot. No, this is a Bigfoot that's carrying a gun and he's out there chasing rabbits, and it's fun stuff. And they have the stormtroopers are doing the same thing now. They have a stormtrooper vlog. It's funny as hell. Yeah, but it's not like they're trying to prove that stormtroopers out there. They're just it's a show. So that I can I have no problem with. It's with these guys that try to create something that that fool people. So you go to their websites or whatever, and then they make money off the hits. How many times it's been seen? Chances are, if you watch a video on YouTube and something happens, it's fake. So, and that never happens in real life. So, what's that in the air? What's in the air? Oh, look, it's a UFO. Zing! It moves away. Oh my God, you catch that? Nobody catches that. We should tell you that right now. So, any video that people see that a UFO does something phenomenal, something crazy, and they just happen to catch it on camera, think to yourself first, why were they looking in that direction? You know, what type of camera were they using to be able to see that? And was it kind of obvious that while they're talking about it, it does something crazy? You know, all that is that's just all fake footage. About 99.9% of it is fake. A very, very small percentage is when people actually catch something and it does something crazy. I've been doing it for over 30 years, and I've been in areas where it's extremely hot, and I've never been able to catch anything that's crazy like that.
Yeah, now you're seeing these videos all the time on the daily that people are catching stuff. Give me a break.
Yeah, and it just hits, and that's all it is. So don't fall into that. I mean, if you think it's cool looking, that's fine. You know, say yeah, and I'll usually say good AI or good AI or good CGI or good animation. It's not real, but it's pretty good. You know, I usually leave little comments, and then of course if it's their YouTube channel, they'll just delete my comment anyway.
Well, Chuck, when you're not chasing UFOs, investigating, building microchips, what do you like to do? What else do you like to do in your spare time?
I like to camp. I'm an outdoors guy.
Hey, I like that.
Outdoors guy. Yeah, you know, if anybody's read the 37 Parallel book, they know that I used to take not me, but my wife, and when we take our vacations, I would generally include a UFO hotspot as one of the spots we would stop off. Now, you know, we were young, we got married and had kids, and you know, by the time, you know, my wife and I were 30, we had 3 kids. So it's expensive to go on vacations, you know, when you have a family of 5. So I traded in, you know, the Goober Mobile, the minivan, and for a 25-foot little Class A motorhome, a little Winnebago Warrior, and that way we could go across, and go on vacation, and you don't have to worry about motels or flying or buying food at restaurants. You know, it's a lot cheaper. But so when I got to the point where I started doing investigations while camping became very popular. And so we've had a couple of RVs and travel trailers, and I just upgraded to a 5th wheel. Matter of fact, anytime I go anywhere in camping, and I have a Harley too. And when I lived in Colorado, when my wife would visit her parents in California, I would put a tent on the back of the Harley, and I'd go up on BLM land on the way to Aspen or on the way to Breckenridge. They have BLM campgrounds. And I go there and I camp by myself, you know, for a night on these, you know, just to, you know, rough it. I've been to Sturgis, I don't know how many times. And every time I go to Sturgis on a Harley, I would take a tent and camp. Only I think 1 or 2 times I stayed in a motel. Most of the time I camp. But anytime I go on vacation or camping, I usually take my camera, and I take a night vision camera, because you never know.
Never know.
And we've done a couple cruises, and I'll get up in the middle of the night on a cruise, and I'll go outside and I'll sit out there for about a half hour on a deck somewhere, and I'll randomly take night vision, 30-second night vision shots of the night sky if it's clear. Because you're out in the middle of the Atlantic somewhere, you know, over by the Bermudas. We got a cruise coming up in October where we'll be in the Gulf of America. I love this. I love seeing that. It's just so cool. I don't know why, but it's so cool. And I've never been there before, but I can tell you that when I lived in California, I tracked a major UFO sighting that went across the U.S., went across Texas, over Corpus Christi into the Gulf of America, and it ended there. So there's something going on out there, you know, in that Gulf region. And so I'm pretty excited about being out there for a few nights where I'll be able to shoot some pictures or video, night vision video. But even, not even that, but if I know I'm going to be out somewhere at night, I'll take that. But camping, So I have camping. I have a Harley, so we go riding the Harley. My other hobby is we have a '57 Pontiac that I've had for a few years, so we take that out for coffee. But that's not really a hobby. But I think my main hobby is I play guitar. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, so I've been when my wife, well, actually, when my wife met me, she didn't even know what I looked like. I had a helmet on. And I was pulling wheelies on a motorcycle.
Hey, that's all it took, right?
That's all it took, and I've known her since then, so we've been together a long, long time. Um, but I was also in garage bands, and I had Mark and I, a buddy Mike, Mark, before we were married, and just after we got married, we were like a Simon and Garfunkel type of thing, and we played parties and bars and stuff like that. So I don't know. So when I moved out here to Texas, I told my wife, I said, if you're gonna move to Texas, I want my music room. And so I was able to get a loft, and so it's my music room. My guitars are all hung up, and my old amps and stuff, and
Yes.
everything's just plugged in. So all I gotta do is walk in there, flip a switch, and start playing my guitar. So anytime I go camping, I take my guitar, or I'll take a ukulele or something, just for the heck of it, just to have fun. So I guess that's my main hobby is music.
I love it, man. This has been a great conversation. I feel like I've been in paranormal class tonight.
Oh my God. And we haven't even hit Bigfoot or cattle mutilation. So we'll have to do that later.
We'll have to revisit that at another time.
Oh, I tell you, I'll knock your socks off with cattle mutilations.
Chuck, thanks so much for joining me, bud.
Okay, thank you very much.
And that's my show for this week. I want to thank my guest, Chuck Zukowski, for joining me. If you want to look up Chuck and his work, you can visit his website at ufonut.com, or you can still find Alien Highway on many different streaming platforms as well. If you've never seen the show and you're a UFO or paranormal nut, then you definitely have to check it out. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to my show on your favorite platform, and follow me on social media as well. X, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, all at Politic Prepper. Or check out my brand new website at thepppodcast.com. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast. Your source for real news and analysis on politics, prepping, paranormal, conspiracy theories, and the volatile state of the world we live in. Tune in next week and every week for a new episode, and stay safe, stay healthy, and stay vigilant.